Hi everyone, welcome to Advanced Scout. And today we've got a great guest, Hugo from Synthetic Users. Hugo's going to tell us all about the product, how that utilizes AI, and we're just going to dig into this whole kind of simulated users discussion as well that we've seen on the internet recently, and just really kind of understand what it is and also where it's going. I came across Hugo by creating quite a similar product in some ways. In that we were creating a platform that creates AI tools, and one of the tools that we were creating was simulated humans, and we had a proof of concept from Fantasy Interactive with synthetic users, and the we then threw the net a bit wider and came across synthetic users and was immediately impressed that one, this thing existed, and two, what a great job it does of simulating research. So I'm very excited that Hugo said yes to doing this interview today, this podcast as such. We're just gonna have a casual conversation, and I think let's get into it. Hugo, could you introduce yourself, please?
Yes, of course. First of all, thank you so much for the invite, James. It's a pleasure to talk to someone who knows about the space, who knows what problem we're trying to solve, and also not even that, just more than that, how we're trying to solve it. So, thank you first of all for the invitation. A little bit about me. I'm Portuguese. I live in Portugal. I've been a product manager for 10, 11 years now. I don't recall exactly, but for some time. But before that, I was in the job of research, not user research, not market research, but academic research, more specifically connected to cognitive sciences, psychology, social psychology. I was a lab manager at my university where I studied, where got my master's in clinical psychology, and then for 6 years I was managing the day-to-day operations of a psychology lab, which involved some of the challenges that I also faced when doing research in an industry setting, which is we need to find the people we want to help. We need to find people that we can learn about. And it was a struggle when I was doing this as my professional role, supporting academic researchers. And it was also a struggle when I moved into the industry and had to do research to help build good products. So this kind of challenge of finding people to who we want to understand, who we want to learn about, who we want to help is something that kind of throughout my career ended up chasing me. Not by accident, it was completely intentional. But I ended up working at Prolific. Prolific is essentially a participant pool for, initially the focus was academic research, but now they're moving a lot into AI because there's all of these annotation tasks that you need to do to create data sets for training. And I ended up joining Prolific during the pandemic. Didn't go well. I'm not a remote guy. I need face-to-face communication. I need to be in the same office with my team. But it was kind of a dream job because when I left my academic research support career, I left that role exactly because I wanted to build something similar to Prolific. So it was kind of a dream come true, although it didn't pan out in the way that I wanted.
Amazing. And this makes me think immediately of our last guest, Arunuma, who worked at IDEO, was a innovation research director at IDEO, who I'm sure you know. And the subject of the conversation was how the art of research may have been lost after COVID. In fact, that everything's been moved online. That clients love jumping on. Clients love the immediacy of doing interviews by video, much like we're doing right now. They love the fact that they can get 8 hours, eight interviews in a day rather than two or three. But there's also a lot lost through that as well in terms of the context setting, if and the actual body language of meeting a person face to face. And I was wondering those research engagements. If we go back a little bit, back at the university, what kind of could you maybe kind of make that come alive a bit more in terms of kind of like what types of research engagements were they? What were they for, and where were they in the world as well?
Okay, so to, just to add something there, the move towards
Yeah.
online was something that was already happening before COVID. It was just then boosted to a huge degree because simply it was a forcing function to move more stuff online. But to give you a little bit more context of what kind of research I supported at my university, at ISPA, we did mainly research about social psychology, cognitive psychology, a little bit of educational and developmental psychology. And it was kind of lab based. I had a lab with 20 computers,
Okay.
with individual booths where students would go and perform tasks. Essentially, it was a little bit drier than when we talk about user research. It was more on showing them stimuli. Imagine, for example, faces that vary in a number of parameters or characteristics, and asking them to assess, is this face more female or more male? Or asking them to read moral dilemmas and reply in how they would resolve that dilemma. So it was mostly experimental psychology with a degree of precision that it's normally not what you're looking for when you're doing particularly qualitative research in user research. We also did some qualitative research there. I helped a lot of people analyze interviews, not user interviews, but interviews about how do parents deal with children tantrums, for example. I remember one of these. We used
Yeah.
software to analyze this. At the time, it was NVivo and Atlas TI to kind of code the interviews and extract the insights. So a process that involves a lot of effort. So it was not exactly what I'm doing now, but in some sense, still within the same space of trying to figure out how do people react to stuff and how do people, what cognitive processes can we learn about, what emotional stimuli do we know work or don't work with particular people.
Yeah, it feels, yeah, it does feel like there's a running theme in terms of the more the kind of the mechanics of psychology, this love of experimentation, and also, I guess, also a passion for technology as well, is what I'm kind of detecting,
Yes,
and that seems to kind of lead
yes.
itself quite well up until prolific, like you were talking about. And I guess I guess to synthetic users now, was it that there was a kind of spark of entrepreneurship at prolific, and this idea of synthetic users came about, and that's why you then moved into doing your own thing? And what kind of happened there? What's the story there?
No, no. So before I joined Prolific, I had already been a product manager at maybe four different startups at different stages,
Okay.
some more early stages, as in kind of joining the initial team, some bigger, some at growth stage with almost 300 people. So I already had this love for building stuff, for helping figure out what problem to solve and what technologies could we now leverage to solve those problems. So was already something that existed within me. And to be honest, when I left the academic research job, I left it because I wanted to start my own company and I wanted to build my own product. My idea was,
Okay.
so I met my co-founder Kwame exactly when I left that role because I joined. He had a design and development agency at the time, and I joined as a social media manager. And my reasoning was I'm going to join his agency because he has developers, people can build stuff, and when I'm there doing social media management for them, I'm going to convince one of his developers to join me and to build the product that I wanted to build. it didn't happen, and I'm happy it didn't, because I'm happy with the path I ended up taking. But that entrepreneurial spirit was always kind of within me. There's an interesting thing here. This hasn't been true throughout my life, because when I was young, I was born in a small town in the interior of Portugal. My parents were communists, really. But I went, when I was a kid, I went out and put out posters with them. And this idea of building my own business was something that was almost alien to me. People like me, in the environment I grew, we don't build business. We work for someone else. So this idea of being able to, I can start my own company and I can build my own product, was something that only came about to me after I started working, and I started seeing other people that I didn't felt were that different from me, starting their own things and being successful or failing. And that was what made me say, oh,
Yeah.
maybe I can do this too. That prolific was not a core part of my prompt to start synthetic users. To be honest, when me and Kwame decided to join forces to figure to build something, we didn't know what to build. We just saw it. We did it completely the wrong way. When you work in product, you always tell people that, hey, you should first find the problem to solve, and then you go and figure out what is the best solution and what kind of technology should you use for it. But we did it completely the other way around. We looked at GPT-3 at the time, and we saw this is a fundamental shift in the technology space. We have now we can now talk to machines. This now we got used to it, but the fact that we can now talk to a computer and he understands natural language in a similar sense that a human does, with the nuances of using qualifiers like, oh, it's kind of like this, and he understands that we're not precisely asking for one thing, but something in that space. This is a fundamental shift that, as always, humanity gets used to stuff, but this is a really, really fundamental shift. And that was what we noticed. We noticed this was before ChatGPT, anything like that. But we noticed that we now have the capability of talking to a computer and getting somewhat of a human understanding, of an equivalent human understanding. And interesting enough, the reason why we ended up starting the idea of using large language models to help product teams build stuff and build useful stuff was because Kwame, one day, I sent him something about ChatGPT, about GPT-3, and he turned to me and said, "Hey, can you build for me a quick prototype of a bedtime story generator?" This was early
Nice.
2022 or late 21. And I asked him, but what kind of story do you want? So, and he told me, so for my daughter at night, I always ask her for two characters, and she gives me two characters, and I write a story, and I come up with a story in real time about those two characters with some kind of moral approach. And what I built was a no-code prototype using GPT-3, in which you could select two characters and it would generate a bedtime story in a couple of seconds. And this was what got Kwame to call me and say, "Hey, let's come to the office Monday and let's figure out what can we do with this." And we did a lot of different prototypes before we settled for synthetic users. We built it.
Okay.
I'm not sure if you're familiar. You probably are. Miro, the online whiteboard. All of our early prototypes were plugins for Miro that we
Okay.
felt
That's
was a
really
place
interesting.
where product managers and user researchers were already quite familiar with. And we built a lot of different things. We built a concept map generator. So essentially, you would add a shape on Miro and you would put a concept there like social psychology. And you would click a button and it would create an entire concept map around that concept. And you could expand nodes, you could remove nodes. We did a business model canvas assistant. So business model canvas is quite a well-known tool for early stage startups to map essentially their business model. What are the suppliers? What's the needs? What's their audience? What's their target customer? What are their capabilities? And we built a thing that you would go to Miro, click a button, get a business model canvas. You would describe your idea, and it would fill the business model canvas for you. And we did maybe 10 different prototypes. And one of them was a persona canvas, essentially another of those templates that you get on Miro, in which you put the persona with a picture, with a name, an age, some demographics, with the pain points that they have, with the needs that they have. And then you could add one card with an idea, and that persona would give you feedback on that idea. And that essentially was the seed for us to focus and decide this is the area of product building and product discovery and product development that people struggle with the most, is kind of understanding their users, really, because it costs money. You need to pay people. People don't go
Yeah.
to user interviews just because they love user interviews. They go there because they're going to get some money. You need to spend the time with them. You need all of that, which we know is extremely valuable. And we think people should still be doing this. But we know that for some stages of the research process, it's overwhelming. And if you can get 80-90% of the results with synthetic users that you would get with humans, but you do it in a couple of minutes, I think that is extremely valuable.
Great. So what I can understand is that you had this experience of joining these early stage technology startups. So maybe they weren't technology startups. Maybe there were all kinds of different early stage
The
startups.
word, the word.
And oh, they were technology startups. Okay, great. And you were almost kind of learning exactly how that worked, how an early stage startup worked. And you were in there and you had this idea of nabbing a developer and setting up your own thing. So you kind of getting you did this kind of clever, smart move of actually kind of learning how it all worked and getting paid at the same time, which I always condone as a move. It's a very smart move, and you're also seeing around that time as well that Chat GPT-3 had this capability, this generative capability as well. And you went from, I think what you're saying is you went from the opposite approach of finding a problem, right, a need, and then building a solution to that. And you went for almost the kind of build it and they will come approach, which is kind of highly frowned upon in the kind of product community. But it doesn't. It's, I guess it's not always a bad thing in terms of if you've got that experience, you kind of got a feeling for what you know works and what doesn't work. You can kind of understand the need already in terms of just that book, right, of well, not book, but of story, of a story creation, and you can see a way of it doing it faster, right? And that's how the generative capability helped, was that your partner, sorry, I can't remember his name. He
Kwame.
had this need, Kwame, sorry, thank you. So Kwame had this need of creating a story every night for his child, and it had to come up on the spot with a couple of characters and then a moral to the story as well, right? And as we know, that's kind of not easy, but it's very well, it is kind of easy now to plug that thing into a generative model and ask for it to kind of spit out a solution to that. But there was that need, right? And he was doing that manually, which is a lot of work. And that really talks to ChatGPT-3 at that time, and I guess even now, in terms of it being able to augment a need, a task, right? It can help you with that task and help you do it a lot faster as well. And and then you took this, I think, pretty, again, another kind of smart move, but risky move as well. You certainly didn't seem to be risk averse in generating lots of generators themselves, plugins to go into Miro to help product people, right, researchers or product managers or business designers, whoever it was, it can speed up their task because you knew already that there was a need there, right? There's a need to do a business model canvas. There's a need to do a customer journey, for example, and and you knew, you could see already from your early testing with that story generator that there was a way to kind of generate that and to augment it and to make it faster and to help this particular market. And you knew that market existed already, all right, because Miro's serving them, and you went in a kind of very, was almost smart way, in terms of you knew there was already a community there, right? Miro has got already, and I
Yes.
always say this is like a really good approach in terms of piggyback on the shoulders of giants, almost, in terms of, if you know there's a community there of thousands already, jump into it, provide them something of value, and you've got a ready-made community already for your product. You can then tell other people this product's great, right? And use that kind of organic approach. And it's almost kind of like I guess you're using almost a fail fast approach in terms of making lots of these little generators and different tools for the Miro, and then tracking them and seeing which ones are popular, which ones are not, which would then give you some signal to go in a certain direction. And then it sounds like synthetic users started to kind of blossom and build as a
Yes.
as an idea and a product.
So there was another reason why we ended up focusing on just one. So I think it was late 22 that we were trying to raise some money to kind of make this a business, hire more people. All of that. Kwame had been kind of paying the bills until then. And we were having some meetings with VCs. We were having meetings with Sequoia, which is kind of one of those big VC firms that everyone respects. And I remember landing in London with my girlfriend and running to a cafe to have the meeting with Sequoia. Um, and one of the things that we heard on that meeting, because we were still presenting all the plugins, was that you don't know what you're really building. And I got slightly offended with it. And I was like, no, I know. I'm building tools for product managers and product designers and researchers. But by the end of the meeting, I felt, in some sense, they are right,
Okay.
because building all these tools and supporting all these tools will leave me spread too thin. I should focus on only one of them, and one that is distinctive enough that first of all, I don't expect the market to get crowded really soon. So, for example, one of the things we considered was, hey, let's build a tool for analyzing existing interviews. And we talked, me and Kwame looked at each other and we started laughing, because we were like, but there are going to be hundreds of them. Because this is one of the obvious capabilities of these kind of models. So the market of synthesizing existing interviews and stuff like that is going to be crowded. And and synthetic user, we went for the persona canvas slash what ended up becoming synthetic users, because we also felt that we had an advantage there, which is, this is an idea that is so outrageous that, first of all, not a lot of people will bet on it. So we have somewhat of a moat, even just out of, I don't think that might work. And then we knew immediately that this would be an idea that people wouldn't be lukewarm about it. They would
Yeah.
either say, I hate this. This should never exist. These guys are completely dumb. I've been called all the names on LinkedIn. You think that LinkedIn is kind of the professional network where people have their work and roles and all, so they're not going to be nasty and rude. And I can guarantee you, people can get really nasty on LinkedIn. I can take it. I even sometimes enjoy it. But we knew that this was an idea that you
It's
had to
very
love
polarizing.
or hate. It is. It is. The day we launched, I tweeted the link for synthetic users. The way we launched I know the day we launched the product, I tweeted one of the, that template where they say something and you reply some other thing. I tweeted the damn, user
Yeah.
research without users, you must be fucking stupid. Yeah, and I replied, maybe. because we knew that I remember suggesting to Kwame that we should have a tab on our website for the haters, for people to have pre-built tweets to tweet nasty things about us, because we knew that this was going to be a polarizing idea. The idea of anything being able to mimic humans, it's something that morally leaves us almost all of us a little bit uncomfortable, because it kind
Yeah,
of
it
removes this idea of magic or uniqueness to the human condition. And I think humans, as in each individual, is really unique. But I think we are also pattern machines, and there are patterns in the way humans behave, think, feel, that can be recognized and can be reproduced, and that's the value I think product like ours can leverage.
awesome. So you launched in 2022 then, is that correct?
We launched No, 2023. So I started
2023.
working with Kwame on July 2022. We launched synthetic users. We decided to focus on only synthetic users in November 22. We launched in March 23, and we started asking people for money in December last year. So we were free for maybe 7, 8 months, and in December last year we put up our paywall and our plans, and now we have paying customers.
Fantastic. So you're still early in the journey, but you're not at the start at all. It's you're a
Yes.
year and a bit, year and change in terms of your journey and launching
Product
and uh,
life.
and product
Yeah.
life. And what have you seen? How have you seen the product change over that year, or and also maybe the market sentiment to the product as well? Is it still so
So the
polarizing?
market sentiment. So one, and it's still quite polarizing. I think we are kind of victims or scapegoats of a phenomenon that shouldn't make anyone happy, which is in recent years there were a lot of layoffs in tech startups, and those layoffs affected particularly the UX research community. So user
Yeah.
researchers, user research managers, all of those, they were deeply affected by the layoffs that happened in the last 3 to 4 years. And because of that, anything that sounds like it might make their job or their career security more vulnerable is something that they kind of, oh my God, no, even if this can help me, I know my boss will use this to fire more people. And that's a valid concern.
Yeah.
And we also took kind of a polarizing approach with our marketing. Our website says user research without users. And this, most people read this and probably intentional on our part as, oh, they don't want us to talk to people. And that's not true. Well, we did this because having that helped us grow a lot, because people were complaining about that heading on our website and ended up sharing them, and some people were curious and ended up signing up. What we feel is that synthetic research, be it synthetic users or any other tool, is a complement to all the tools that we already have available. Some people run surveys, some people do field research, some people run user interviews, some people just rely on pure analytics from the apps they build, some people just rely on sales. There's a lot of ways for us to understand how the products we build are received, if we should build a product for a particular need. So this is it's a toolbox, and with any type of research, you shouldn't rely on a single tool. You should complement tools. All of them have strengths, all of them have weaknesses, and you should use them in conjunction to kind of address those weaknesses and strengths. And I think synthetic research is just the extension of that. It's a type of research that has huge advantages: speed, cost. It's incredible how fast you can get the lay of the land of a particular audience or a particular user group in a couple of minutes with our product. It has also shortcomings. You mentioned before that moving towards online made us lose some parts that are quite important in research, like body language, and seeing the context in which people work, all of that.
Yeah.
Synthetic users right now it's not even doesn't really convey body language. It simply doesn't convey body language. It's purely text. There's not even a tone of intonation or anything like that. So we don't we can't by definition replace all the research you run, but we can be a way of doing user and market research without talking directly to human users. You talk to synthetic users, but not human users. So there's always this kind of trade-off, and I think instead of people looking at synthetic users and thinking that we're a threat or that we want to make people not do research with humans, that's not at all. We just think that depending on the level of risk, depending on the level of certainty you already have about a particular topic, you should select the tool that best fits the job. And I think ours should be one of them.
And what? Yes. And what are the topics? Would you say? What are the use cases? What is the pain point or the problem that synthetic users solves for your client base? Because as you said, you've already got paying customers, so there's obviously a need there that you're fulfilling. So, what have you seen is, I guess the top archetype or your typical kind of paying client. Who is that person?
Okay.
Without naming names, of
So
course.
we have no, I can't. For our so let me give you just a little bit of context. When we launched, me and Kwame, we were convinced that our ICP, ideal customer profile, was going to be small startups, maybe indie hackers, freelance user researchers. We sort of ourselves as kind of Canva, Canva.com, that allows you to do
Yeah.
posters and a little bit of graphic design. We thought about us ourselves like Canva. We're going to be serving the underserved market in the same way that my mom can't open Photoshop to design a birthday card for my son, but she can use Canva for that. So we're going to be helping people who are not maybe research specialists, and then we're going to find a way to move up market to the more mature organization. But that didn't happen because when we launched, we got some early traction with that area of the market, and we still have a lot of people, namely freelance researchers, using us and agencies using us. But suddenly, I'm getting emails from Fortune 500 consumer packaged goods, financial services companies, healthcare services companies emailing me and saying, "Can I get a demo?"
Okay.
And that made me kind of wait, but these guys have the budget. Why do they want to use us? And then after having the conversations with them, we understood what was their pain. Their pain is that if they want to test a particular concept or several concepts or the same product but different sets of features with real people, they're going to take 3, 6 months, 9 months to run a full study. And their innovation teams simply don't need that level of precision. Their innovation teams probably just want to sort out the 3 best concepts and then test them with humans instead of sending 20 different concepts to test with humans, which is a huge mess. So one use case is big companies that either have hard to find audiences. Imagine you're a big company building a product for CEOs of tech companies. How many CEOs of tech companies do you think you can recruit with a £50 Amazon voucher? None, because their time is just too precious to be spending doing user interviews, discussing the challenges they have with their CRMs. It's simply it's not possible. So these companies
Yeah.
either have
From
these
someone who's
hard to
done the
find
work, I
audiences,
completely agree with you.
or they just want an early validation or invalidation of a bunch of concepts or prioritization of a bunch of features they are planning for something that they want to roll out. So this is one of the big use cases. The other one is agencies. design and innovation agencies that work with new customers every month, sometimes every week, and they do design sprints, they do innovation workshops, and they want to be able to get feedback while they're doing those workshops with their customers in a way that allows them to move forward and test and challenge the ideas they came up with in a way that allows them to move faster. And then we have the freelance indie hackers or almost sometimes mom and pop kind of stores that want to
Mm.
figure out if there's something in a new idea that they had that are also using it. But to be honest, what we're focusing right now is on the enterprise customers. Those are the ones that first of all, they were the ones reaching out. So we didn't plan to go for them immediately as a market, but they reached out. So I have to respect them for that. And they are the ones that have the needs that we can solve best at this time. We're building new products like surveys. Until now, we're always on the qualitative side, and we're building now a survey product that we're getting ready to roll out. Those are also the customers that ask us for some particular features that we think can make our product even better. So there's this thing in generative AI, which is called research augmented generation. Essentially is beyond what the model already knows, you provide some extra context to improve the quality of the responses from the model. So these big companies have decades of research they've done with their customers, interviews, transcripts, customer support data. They have surveys, and they want to use that to ground and enrich the synthetic users they generate even more. So we're building also that for them. And also that one thing that Kwame has been asking me almost since day one, which is we're going to be also building features that allow companies to analyze visuals. So be it product packaging, be it an ad, be it a particular user interface. By the end of this year, you're going to be able to upload those images to synthetic users and get feedback on what might be the best product packaging for this new cereal you're developing, or what might be the best image for this ad for menswear that you're putting out, or what might be the user interface that best converts for these people who have challenges in terms of accessibility. So this is what's coming down the pipeline.
Very, very interesting. Your statement around the corporations reminds me of something that the entrepreneur Alex Hormozy said recently in terms of, and he seems to be constantly preaching this in terms of if you're kind of that ICP, that ideal customer profile, if it's a rich person, you'll find that a rich person will be happy to pay for exactly the same solution if it can do it in at twice the speed. So if we do it half the time, they'd be happy
I
to
don't
pay
think
a
twice is
premium for that.
enough.
Yeah.
I don't think
Okay.
twice
Agreed.
is enough. You probably need
Yeah.
3x, 4x, but yes, they are
Yeah.
happy to pay for exactly the same product.
Yeah.
So that's been now our focus.
And those organizations of that size also generate so many ideas as well, and need those ideas
Exactly.
validated it fast to understand which direction to go in. So that makes complete sense. I didn't know that, and thanks for sharing that with us. But that makes complete sense, and that's a really nice base as such for the business as well in terms of revenue model. That feels
Yes.
fairly sustainable, which is fantastic. And I love the fact you're still serving those other markets as well, those innovation agencies who are doing things like design sprints and I guess augmenting the process, because using the design sprint process, you test the prototype or the idea after a few days on five real users. But I guess they can speed it up and validate which ones to go with, and maybe even take in still to that user testing situation with real humans. It gives them a little bit more of signal and direction where to go. And then there's mum and pop stores as well. The fact that they're still wanting to use it is fantastic. Yeah. Well, so
Yes.
where are you?
The
Go ahead. Sorry.
I was going to say that one of the things that synthetic users couldn't be built around a business model that was focused on mom and pop stores or indie hackers
Hmm.
is just because the need for research doesn't have enough cadence within those groups for to justify a business like
Yeah.
ours, and we're happy to serve them, but they can never be our core market because they're going to be doing research in the best case scenario once a month, once every 3 months, and there's not a business to be built there. Happy to serve them, but from just a more commercial standpoint, it wouldn't make sense.
Yeah. The most one of the most important things in business I've been taught is growth. That in order to survive, you need to grow. And those mom and pop stores, they may be
Yes,
growing, but they're doing very, very, very slowly. Whereas in a corporate, you need to grow a bit faster, and also you've got companies inside the company and divisions inside those companies that all need to grow as
exactly.
well. So you've got a huge demand there
The
that makes
innovation
complete sense.
surface is a lot bigger. Yes, exactly that.
Yeah, fantastic. And in terms of the future, you kind of hinted already where you may be going, but what is the plan for the future? One thing that came into my mind as you were talking was insurance companies and medical health and typing in the specifics of someone's health history or past, and then being able to model exactly when will they pass away, to be rather morbid. Because I know inside insurance companies that is one of the main business, right? They actually have departments doing that, and they're able to
Yes.
then understand how much insurance that person should pay, and do that. There seems like kind of almost endless if you really think about it, applications of this kind of technology. But I guess coming back to synthetic users, where are you seeing it going in the future?
Okay, just to touch the insurance part. The insurance, exactly what you described, insurance was exactly an industry that was built on the predictability of humans, on the predictability
Yeah.
of large numbers of humans. So no one can know what's going to happen to that specific person. But if we have enough data points, we can, to a certain degree of accuracy and with a certain margin of error, we can predict certain outcomes. And that's essentially what particular life insurance companies sell is if you're older, you're going to die sooner. If you had this medical history, you're going to have more problems. So the idea of predicting what humans do at a group level or at a particular demographic or aggregate of characteristics always existed. We're not synthetic users is not novel in that sense. But to go back to what is the core question that you just posed to me, what's the future of synthetic users? So the future of synthetic users is an agentic future. This is kind of, I'm a little bit sad because we had discussed this before, but now it's all the rage in the generative AI space. But essentially,
Yeah.
I
but
want
but a
my
lot of people don't
customers
understand
to
what that
be able
term
to
is.
come to me. Yes, so agents are essentially entities that are powered by some kind of technology, in this case, AI, and namely large language models that can take decisions, that at certain points can decide if they're going to use this tool, if there's enough information to move forward to the next step, what the next step should be. And how we have been thinking about this is we want to be an end-to-end innovation engine, essentially allowing companies to come to us, for example, describing what they do right now, what they sell, what capabilities they have in terms of, for example, supply chain, manufacturing, and what kind of customer they might want to serve. And we can generate data through different research methods. We can go first and generate agents that mimic what an ethnographic researcher would observe for that particular group. From that, you can extract insights and go deeper with user interviews. From there, you extract more insights and validate them, for example, with surveys. From there, you can then ideate within the capabilities of the company what might be some solutions that this company could build to solve those problems. validate them further, improve them with more synthetic research combined with human research, and eventually even building the product itself or prototyping the product, or even creating ads and running them on online platforms to validate if the need is there, if the price point is correct. So an end-to-end innovation engine that takes the best of AI and the best of humans and allows companies to innovate at the speed of large language models.
Okay, amazing. Two questions then. When well that no, that one I think I'll leave till second. So at the moment, how do you we talked about predictability a lot. And how do you guarantee predictability? I think when we talked about before, we talked about the big five in terms of personality traits. But the one thing that I've seen, especially even myself with experimenting with creating a synthetic user just through ChatGPT, is that it's quite unpredictable, the responses you get. And I'm wondering, perhaps you can't share it. Maybe it's proprietary information you can't share. But how do you kind of guarantee predictability at a high level in terms of being able
So
to act like a real
the
human?
Okay. Two separate things here, which is one is large language models and this kind of AI systems are stochastic systems. So there's no way for us to guarantee that with the exact same input, you're going to get the exact same output. And exact same is the operative part here. Because even though if I generate a synthetic user that is, to use the personality example, that is high on extroversion, which is typically in humans, a person that likes to talk to a lot of people, likes to go out, likes to interact socially. And I asked him to describe a situation that he went through last week. If I do this 10 times, the text that is generated will never be the same. Never. Never is not the correct word, but there's an infinitesimal probability of getting the same text. But this is the exact same text. But if you do content analysis on all of those 10 descriptions, patterns emerge. There will be mainly situations that you can validate through academic research reflect what a person with high levels of extroversion would expose themselves to. So there's this on the granular level. There's not you can never get exactly the same result, but what matters is that at the higher level you get predictable patterns. And we do our own research internally to validate. We run interviews with real people in which we ask them questions that we ask also to our synthetic users, and we have some systems to validate the amount of overlap between the topics, not necessarily the so two things here. One is the content, and the other one is the form. I don't care that much about the form because our synthetic users, almost all of them, in almost all situations, are better grammatically than what you would get on a user interview. If you've seen transcripts of user interviews, people stop mid-sentence. They're full of they're hard to parse even when you're reading them, and that's not what happens with synthetic users. The text that you get from a user interview at synthetic users is an extremely readable text. But I'm not worried about that part. We consider dumbing it down and making them sound more like a real interview, but then we decided that there was no value in that, because what we care about, it's not the form, but the content. Does an interview about a shared custody parent with synthetic users talks about the same topics that an interview of a shared custody parent with a human? Yes, they do, to a huge degree. And we run our own studies, but even if we didn't have our own measures, and in the beginning we didn't, it was mostly eyeballing and me reading loads of interviews of stuff that I was personally involved with. I'm a shared custody parent, and this is an example that I used in the beginning to generate synthetic users because I know what the struggles I go through. I know what other shared custody parents go through. So I know that space of challenges and pains quite well. And I was generating synthetic users exactly because I felt that it's not an obvious thing and I can kind of gouge it. Now we have better systems in place. But even if we didn't, the amount of papers, academic papers from researchers in sociology, anthropology, psychology, economics, in a lot of different disciplines that are using exactly large language models to try to reproduce studies with humans to see are the differences. I read a huge amount of these papers because it allows me to see where might these systems be falling short and try to set up improvements for them. The amount of papers in academic research that show these models are pretty good at reproducing particular demographics. They have more challenge with some other demographic. That by itself would be, for me, sufficient enough validation. But since I need to improve my system, I need to have my own evaluation framework to know exactly where my system and not how those researchers are running their studies is falling short and where I might need to improve either the entire infrastructure or the prompts that I use at every step.
Okay, fantastic. I love the fact that you're actually running tests on real humans as well to understand and validate your
Yes, of
output of the
course.
tool. And I don't think, well, it probably is written in the synthetic users website quite a lot, but I don't remember reading that. And I think that's probably something to shout about a bit more for sure, because
There's
yeah.
we need to be more explicit about it, but there's a section there. It's Kwame that manages all of that. So I'm not 100% sure where, but I'm sure we have some.
Okay, fantastic. How do you? I've been recently reading about synthetic users in terms of having a bias to kind of people please and be happy and upbeat
Well,
and kind of give a positive tone all the time. Is that something that you've experienced as well? And how do you kind of,
of
I guess,
course,
deal with that? Yeah.
of course. Since day one, yeah, large language models want to please you, and the recent versions of these models, which goes through a process that the initial models, GPT-3, didn't go through, makes them even more on the pleasing side.
Mm.
And this process is called reinforcement learning through human feedback. It's a process that is needed to make sure that these models don't create offensive content, that these models don't express political opinions. That if you go and ask one of these models, hey, can you tell me if Hitler was good? All of these models will refuse. But if you ask enough people out there in the world, you're going to end up with someone that says, yes, Hitler is good. So, in some sense, these models don't reproduce all the distribution of human opinions that you find out there in the real world for good reasons, because these are models that are trained to interact with the general public, and because of that, you need to have some kind of guardrails so they don't start saying that a particular group of people shouldn't exist or anything like that. So
Okay.
this is why these models right now are even harder to get away from that pleasing and that kind of social acceptability bias that they already had in the beginning, but now they have it even more. That's why we do something which is we do most of our studies that are run now in our platform don't use one single model. And with the prompts and with the systems we've built, taking away that sequency tendency of just trying to please whatever you say and trying to say yes to everything you say. In the beginning, I remember running a test when we were prototyping the idea and asking a synthetic user that was a parent, a recent parent, and asking them, so I have this idea for a product. So it's dog food that your baby can also eat. And what do you think about this idea? And the synthetic user, this was not a synthetic user even at the time, but the response was, oh, I think that's a great idea. Then I could save money by just having to buy one type of food. And I remember throwing the heads my hand and thinking, oh my God, this is going to be a lot of work because no one would say this. No one would say, I want efficiency, so I want to give the same food to my baby that I give to my dog." No real person would say this. So that's essentially what the battle that we've been battling since we launched is essentially through different approaches. We're going to be starting to use some models that haven't gone through this reinforcement learning through human feedback phase, what's called base models, with specific techniques, so we get the feedback that a person would say, and not just kind of the rosy presentation that you get if you try to do something similar to what we do using, for example, ChatGPT. If you do it on ChatGPT, they're going to like all your ideas. They're going to say that everything is good, and they're going to present themselves in the best light possible. And we know humans are not like that. Humans are flawed in a beautiful way. We have challenges. We struggle. We contradict ourselves.
Yeah.
We contain multitudes, as Walt Whitman said, and that's something that we strive to make our system reflect. We recently launched a new type of research that you can do now in our platform. It's called ethnographic research. So instead of interviewing synthetic users, what we generate is a field researcher that will go and visit a synthetic user and describe what he sees. And the reason why we watch this is essentially as another way to come around that kind of bias, because we discover that if we do this, it's a lot easier for our ethnographic researcher to describe tensions and to describe the user in a less favorable light and more real and more grounded in what really happens in people's lives than if we ask a synthetic user to reply about their challenges and their pains.
Yeah, I can see that because then they're commenting more on the external forces that are separate from them. So there's a way to separate their own being
Exactly.
from,
There's not
from
an
that. So it's
identity. Exactly.
thank you. Yeah, exactly, exactly. And I guess that was my second question in terms of if someone's choosing between your product and a competitor's product, why would they choose your product? And it feels like that feature is definitely something I haven't seen or heard about. Yeah, yeah, and also, I know we don't have much time left. I probably just want to say also that I've used the product. I love the product because we used it, or we've got researchers out in South Africa at the moment, and they did 900 customer interviews about the price point for a product called B Powered, a battery product, and we ran the same research exercises on synthetic users, and it came back with pretty much the same information and validated the price point that we had. So I'm definitely a fan of the product, so I can see why I would choose a product. But I'm just wondering, yeah, for other people, if they're looking between similar products to yours, what's the kind of things that yours does better?
So, to be really honest, when we talked before, you mentioned one particular product. I'm okay with mentioning it. Synthetic Humans from Fantasy.
Yeah.
And to be honest, I never tried their product. I tried to sign up for their presentation webinar, and 10 minutes before the webinar, they removed me. I expect that they saw synthetic users in my email and
Yeah.
didn't want me to know what the product, how the product was built. Although they were using my product for months before they launched theirs.
Okay, that makes
So
sense
I
for someone who's
haven't
seen their
yet
product.
tried.
Yeah.
Okay. So I haven't yet tried the product because for me the big competitor I have is not that one or any other. There's a couple of other similar-ish products to ours. I think that one is the one that's closer to what we do. I don't think that's our competitor. Our competitor
No.
right now is the heavy, slow, with a lot of challenges process that the companies have as their standard. I think any company right now that is considering synthetic research will try different products, and I think that is a great thing because I'm quite confident in what we deliver, and I think that if people try our product and compare it with any other option for synthetic research that is out there in the market, I'm confident that they're going to stay with us. And in some sense, I don't even care if they pick another one because right now it's about growing the impact that synthetic research can have, and having a lot of players is a good thing. I'm a person who believes in the market forces, and I think having different options is a good thing. It forces me to consider if there's something that I might not be serving correctly, if I can improve. So I'm quite okay with having other options. I've recommended other people to try. They ask me, "Oh, do you know other companies that do something similar?" And I tell them, I have this list. Go try them and let me know. And sometimes they come back and say, I tried yours, I tried theirs, and here I am. Can we do a deal? So I'm quite confident in that. I think now it's mostly about people getting comfortable with this idea that synthetic research has valid contributions for the research process, and not as much as what's the market share of my product versus some other product. The pie is still to grow so much that I'm not worried about what's the size of my slice.
Fantastic. And from some, and I love that transparency, right? That I think that's how you build trust with customers as well. Having that transparency. Here's the list of the competitors. Go and try them. Go and please do go and
Go.
try them and compare and also having that kind of that conversation bit at the end where you just said, come back and tell us how it went as well. I'd love to hear that. And there's that I feel your product is high value and low effort. It really is, because from my understanding, you have a 7-day free trial. You can go in quite easily, type in exactly what your research need is, and then it generates everything for you while you sit there and have a cup of tea or coffee or whatever whatever your favorite drink is.
Your
And
favorite
it,
drink.
yeah, I would encourage everyone to test it. I mean, how do people find out more about synthetic users? How do they experience themselves, and how do they find out more about you as well if they want to connect?
So, if people want to connect, they can go to my favorite. I need to say that I hate LinkedIn.
Yeah,
I deeply hate that social network. I think it's one of those cases when people ask me what are network effects, Hugo, and I tell them it's LinkedIn. It's a terrible social network full of people boasting about stuff they didn't really do, or pretending they know a lot about topics that they have no idea about. But that's where the business is. So they can find me on LinkedIn, searching for Hugo Alves, or just synthetic users. If they want to learn about our product, they can go to app.syntheticulsers.com and they can start the trial, 7-day free trial. They can use all the features we have. They can see how the product performs. One thing I recommend everyone is there's nothing, I could share all the benchmarks and everything I want. But the best use case is one of two. The ideal one for me is you're a company, you have some research you've run recently that you don't think it's kind of obvious. Go and try to reproduce that research on synthetic users. The research questions, not the answers. Just give us what you wanted to learn and see if what you can get out of synthetic users is anywhere similar to what you got with the research that took you a lot of money and took you a lot of time. The second option, if you don't have this, is try it with something personal. If you are, like me, a shared custody parent, someone who has a kid but is no longer with the other parent, go ask synthetic users what are some common things that they feel could be improved, what are some challenges, or anything else that you think it's specific to you and that you know quite well, so you can gauge the results, how good the results are in the best way. And then if you have any feedback, if you have any requests, if you would like to see something different or something improved or a new type of interview we don't support yet, just send me an email, hugo@syntheticulsers.com, and I'm happy to try to help you, either solving it with what we have or even building it for you.
fantastic. Thank you, Hugo. I'll encourage everyone to please do visit and use a product. It's fantastic. It's a real eye opener and real time saver as well. And from someone who's been doing research for over 20 years, I can kind of say yes, it is a good product. It does work. Is there anything that you
Thank you.
wanted else? My pleasure. Thank you. Is there anything else you wanted to discuss before we finish up? Is there anything that you're hoping to talk about that we haven't covered today?
No, I think we covered the main topics that I think kind of are central to this discussion. There's one final point that I want to make, which
Yeah.
is our product was built to help market researchers, user researchers, and it's something that pains me so much is, and I see this a lot on LinkedIn, is user researchers are the first one to say that you shouldn't rely on your assumptions and you should try to get data to validate or invalidate your assumptions, and you should be open to new ideas and you should be open to new ways of doing things. And then there's a group, a segment within the user researcher community that is so averse to innovation and it just stands their ground on their own assumptions that I'm deeply disappointed by this. While I understand that it's not an easy thing, and I love people who are skeptic about the product, but the fact that they're not even willing to try it, it just disappoints me so much from a community that I know can do so much better.
Agreed. And I would encourage that community to just try it. Just, it doesn't take long. Sign up
Exactly.
takes just well, a minute at most, and you'll be getting in there and getting results within 5 minutes of using the product. So do go and use a product. Do actually test it and come back with real data points to back up your, I guess,
Exactly.
observations
And
and
real
thoughts
feedback.
and real feedback because synthetic users wants it. Please do give them the feedback. Yeah, from your
Exactly.
tests. Okay, great. Thanks so much for joining Advanced Scout, and great rest of your day. Thanks for your time, Hugo. It's a great conversation.
Thanks, James. Thank you for the invitation.
Thanks. Bye bye.